Well, welcome everyone to episode 98 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. My name is Kenny, and I go by KCCO Gamer. And all the way from Thunder Bluff, Louisiana, we have Cinder.
I'm here, worse for the wear, but I'm here.
And from the Maelstrom, Louisiana, we have Appa.
We're so close to episode 100, and I'm so hyped for that.
Nice. And then joining us from Gadgetan, New York, we have Ridiculous Hat.
For those of you audio listeners, I received feedback from the patrons that I should wear more hats, so I'm wearing a hat that says Ridiculous on it. And if you're not watching the live cast, you should really be watching.
That is a ridiculous hat, though. Literally.
It's bigger than my head by a pretty large margin.
Yeah, if you're not watching the live cast, I think we can classify that as a punt.
A punt. All right, well, hey, speaking of punts, Concede is supported in a large part by you, the listener. So if you'd like to find out how you can support us, go check us out at patreon.com/coinconcede. So
how does that transition the Patreon?
That's the whole point.
Speaking of punts,
I'm
goes into a completely different topic.
I'm confused, but we'll go with it.
We'll punch yourself over to the Patreon website. All right, let's hear about ladders. I think I'm in last place, so I'll go first. I'm at rank 10. Woohoo, I guess. I have been grinding priest. It's priest.
Like you was at the club.
Not that way.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Yeah, no.
This is PG-13. Come on.
Okay. I was playing a priest, and it took 2 hours to play 7 games, which I'm used to faster decks, and that's eternity to me. I'm like, I got nowhere.
This is what you get for playing priest. There's a reason priest was my 9th golden class. It just takes forever to play games.
So I finally got to 10. I was 1 game away from 10 on a win streak. And I queued up priest and lost that game. I was like, oh, man. And then I lost the next game. I was like, no. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to play this Warlock Paladin heat that's been shared in our Discord. And I won the next 3 games. I got to 10. I was like, all right, I'm going to Wild and playing something different. I played some Rogue, with some of the new cards, and Mill Rogue, too. So that was fun. Got up to 15. We should be good. So that's my week on ladder. What about you? We're going to start with Hat.
Well, we started with you, but I'll go second. I am floating around rank 2. I have played a lot of different decks. I actually haven't been interested in kind of committing to one deck because it's new expansion time, and that's really exciting. So the deck that has done the best for me, I think, is actually Tempo Rogue, or at least it did until I coached Hatch and Slash with it today, and we lost 5 games in a row. But it was great before that. And Plague Scientist has my favorite battle cry sound of the whole set.
What does that one actually say? I don't actually know what he says.
Calm down, I'm a doctor.
Oh, I thought he was saying Cthulhu, I'm a doctor, and I'm like, that's not the math.
Hang on, Cthulhu, I'm a doctor.
He's not a panda.
He's an optometrist.
But so I've also played a little bit of everything. I played some Druid at the beginning of the expansion, but I am steadfastly committing to not playing too much more Druid. Murloc Paladin's still good. Aggro Paladin's fun. Prince Kaliseth is good, which I'm disappointed by, but I am still playing it. And I'm trying so hard for Life Tap to be good, and it's almost there. Almost there. And I have also played some Big Priest. I've played everything. Man.
It's really hard for Life Tap to be like really good in a meta where you're just like making a billion jades.
Well, so we're not going to talk too much about the jade thing. I will say that drawing 5 cards while you play a 10-mana spell that does other stuff is better than paying 2 mana and 2 life a turn. But that comparison isn't helpful. Warlock has been fun. I've enjoyed playing it, and I have actually enjoyed Priest, both Razakus Priest, that's what we're calling it now. Raza and Kazakus is Razakus. And also Big Priest is a lot of fun. You just do nothing for about 5 turns, and then you play a 6-mana spell, and then you just keep resurrecting obsidian statues, and then they die. So, it's great.
Yeah, it's like Concede Priest would be a perfect name for that deck. Because you just get, like, buried under their giant minions, and then you just, like, either try and fight through it and fail, or you're just like, I give up. I don't want to play this.
Yeah, well, it's big. I actually asked Evident from Hearthstone Top Decks this on Twitter today. How would you describe the deck's difficulty if you only had 2 letters? And the answer is easy. Yeah.
Or 2 syllables, big priest.
Yeah, easy, big.
Easy. Priest.
Easy.
What about you, Appa? Let's hear about your week.
So, just like as a little bit of a background, Cinder, Hat, Taylor, Eve, and I, we have like a chat that we've basically had open since DreamHack Austin. It was just like a testing chat in Twitter, but we just kind of like keep it open to like just talk about random stuff and fuss in. And like the past 4 days, I've been bouncing between like rank 8 and rank 7. And yesterday, it just like came to this climax where I was just like, I hate everything. I'm so mad. I'm so tilted. I feel like I'm terrible at Hearthstone. I just want to cry. And then Hat talked me down from the virtual ledge I was standing on. And he was like, all right, here's these things. And he like listed these things out. He's like, all right, just like take a break. You're doing results-oriented thinking, and it's super dangerous. And it's true. Like I logged up Hearthstone, went to sleep. Then I got up today. I was like, all right, I'm just going to focus on having fun and just like playing well, and I don't care about my ranks. And I got rank 5 of like 3 hours before the podcast. And I only lost like 3 or 4 games or something. So I'm sitting at rank 5 right now. Hat is going to be my shout out this week. Spoiler alert.
We're not at the end of the show yet.
Well, you can skip me when we get there. So shout out to Hat for making me feel better and talking me down for my horse. Yeah.
All right.
5 right now.
And Cinder.
I have been sampling all the various flavors and delicacies that make up the Warlock class since I opened up Blood Reaver Gul'dan, and it's been fun. And I'm bouncing around rank 6 and 7 right now. Although I decided to just go ahead and take Murloc Paladin out and just push to 5, just so I can sit on the rank floor at 5 and just do whatever I want with Gul'dan. And I don't care what the Paladin deck is named right now. I have renamed it Bone Mare is Bull, and you can fill in the rest.
I think we should start calling it, and I posted this on Twitter. I think we should start calling Bone Mare Dr. Bone.
I'm okay with Dr. Bone. That's fine. We said it was going to be a good card, but we just kind of glanced over it because it's like, it's a common. The effect is obvious. This is a good card.
It's like, all right, if you have stuff on board, it's solid. All right.
It's real good. It's Blessing of Kings with a 3-mana 5/5 behind it. It's really good. But
with taunt. Also.
With taunt, gotta remember that taunt. So yeah, Warlock. I'm convinced that Warlock can be made into a playable class. A lot of people are experimenting with it, and I am one of them. So hopefully, we will see results soon.
All right. So I'm going to start off with the. Again, I'm taking the lead here. Start off with coaching. I coached Esperoth for the first time, so she was awesome. I liked her. Just to mention a quick little story, she was commenting during she wanted to play Gul'dan, which she has a nickname. I'll get to it. Apparently, in England, if you're in England right now and you have kids around, you may want to just skip ahead 2-3 minutes. But yeah, so she was saying that I guess one of his emotes kind of swears and says bloody, which doesn't really mean anything here in the U.S. I don't consider it.
But Esperoth is literally Siri, so she's British.
Yes.
Yeah. This guy test calling voice.
Yes. So she calls it bloody Gul'dan. She just loves the emote. She's like, I can't let my kids play this, but I can't have any kids around while I'm playing this. But hey, so that's very interesting that she was wondering if Hearthstone's team is involved with the emotes and knowing if it's just kind of a semi-swear. Like it's nothing you're going to really. It's not bad. I guess it would be like, damn, like you could hear it on the radio or on the television, but it's, you know, so just got a little fun conversation from that. So she calls it sweary Gul'dan. I can't say it like her. She has the best. I call it accents, not an accent to her, but so yeah, I had fun with her. We played a little bit of everything, and we just kept playing Gul'dan for a while. Did decent. I caught Nostromo, which he's been crazy busy. We had 2 hours because we did a makeup from last month. We played pretty much Shaman the whole time, and we played a list he was playing, so that was fun. We found out he pretty much needs a second Bloodlust with that list because we couldn't really go anywhere. We ran out of oomph, and we wished we had that card a lot. So yeah, those are my two. I have a couple. I may have one after the show if we can squeeze them in, and then maybe another 2 tomorrow. But I'm starting to move, so it's going to be hard to squeeze people in. So I hope we get that soon. Let's go with Cinder next.
I had my monthly meme session with Sir Slips, but I was able to bring him the good news that Kazakus Priest is not a meme anymore. It is actually a real deck that is actually real good. Yeah, so we played that a bunch, and it was fun. End of story.
Good talk.
All right. and Appa?
So TG Raider TG Raider and Viriatus are the only ones I have left to coach this month. Coached a bunch of people this month. I coached Kazan and Kalem this week. We did deck building stuff. We had a lot of fun with that with Kazan last night. I think it was last night. Pretty sure. We made a quest rogue or quest mage deck, and we taught him how to build around some cards, all that kind of fun stuff. And then we built. What else did we build? I can't remember the other deck we built for the life of me. But with Kalem, he wanted to just play Evolve Shaman. He was like, I would be remiss if I didn't just play Shaman with you. I was like, all right, cool, let's play some Evolve Shaman. Unfortunately, we went 2 and 3.
Womp womp.
So it wasn't the best coaching session, but I did teach him some things with the deck. We didn't win all of our games, unfortunately. We didn't even win 50% of our games, but we had fun. But yeah, it was a good week for coaching. Then I got 2 more coachings left, and then everybody's taken care of.
Yeah, speaking of Wantwa, is this a good transition here? So Hat was telling us about
Thanks, Kenny. That's a really great segue. I love this segue. So today I played with Hatch and Slash, and I'd like to think that I'm a better coach than this. Well, we put in a solid 0-7 before the podcast, so
nice.
Yeah. So, and it was with the Tempo Rogue that I think my record with it is, yeah, I'm 4-1 with it on the ladder with my current build. And then we lost 5 games in a row, so I guess I'm 4-6. But yeah, I'd like to not blame variance, but also I'd like to, we looked back at the plays. There were a couple small judgment calls, but it might be that the deck was just too fair. We didn't play Bone Mare, and we were trying to kill people, so maybe that was the problem, but we kept losing to the card in the far right, and it happened 4 games in a row, and it was.
I think it's a good thing to at least mention that even though we have coachings, things like this happen. We're not. Yeah. So.
Well, and I've coached with Hatch before. He's a good spirit. He's a good sport.
Hat, would you call yourself a lawyer?
No.
So if you went 0-7, I think we could call you a public defender.
It was well. I was more of a doomsayer because after the last session, I was like, the end is coming. Gotta go podcast. But at the same time, yesterday I played with Bruised Elbow and Pugus, and the only game I lost between the 2 sessions with Bruised Elbow, we played Token Shaman, and that was awesome. And we actually played a build with no Thrall, and we played double Sea Giant, double Bone Mare. And it was super good because easy big, easy shaman, easy. But then also, so that was really, really fun with Bruised Elbow, and he's a great guy. Apparently, he usually plays Hearthstone in the woods near his house, near a fire, an actual fire, which seems amazing. And then I played with Pugus yesterday, and he is like, what's this Jade Druid about? I've never played a lot of Jade Druid. It's like, oh, you sweet summer child. And the only game we lost was a Jade Druid mirror, so. And then I played with Lost Adrift over the weekend. We built Reno, I think it was a Reno Paladin in Wild, and that was super great. And then I played with Cap Correlator, and we went around 50-50 on New Zealand time, but it was a lot of fun playing with him too. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's good. Did you want to mention to anybody that may be missing on should filling out the form? Actually, we still have a couple people that need to fill it out, right?
I have the tracker here. Nostromo, I know you don't always have a ton of time, so it's totally cool if you don't fill out the form, but I haven't gotten it from you. Daniel H, I still am missing your form. Ronka, Mickey, I got your forms. TG Raider, I know Appa has something scheduled with you, and Omnitrio, I think Appa has something scheduled with you as well. But if not, we'll reach out to you after the cast. But
yeah, I actually have to reach out to him.
Yep, and then
there's a couple people that I glossed over in my initial batch of emails that I'm still getting to.
But we'll get to all of you. We have an unbelievable amount of sessions scheduled this month, and I think we have 37 sessions so far, and so it looks like we're going to be just over 40 by the end of the month.
There we go.
That's a lot of coaching.
All right. I do want to give a big thank you out to Rayganis Prime this week for his unbelievable pledge. Thank you so much for your support. Do we want to mention this later, I guess? Because we're in our thank yous? No, let's mention it now. He's our new
producer.
Well, I was going to say producer. I started thinking about Viriatus too. So we have 3 currently, or will be. Okay, Viriatus is actually going to be stepping down here soon, so he may be replacing him.
But we still love you, Viriatus.
Viriatus will not be leaving. I mean, he was just taking a step down.
Yeah.
But if he can get back, he will, and he's still supporting us. But yeah. So not to downplay Rayganis Prime. Thank you, new producer.
Yes.
You were gonna say
cheer sound effect.
I would play it, but the soundboard's not working right, and y'all can't hear
it. I believe if you say you play it.
Okay. I'll add it in post.
Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna go off of the sound card here too and say, hit us with the news. All right, so we have the first piece of news, which is our Tavern versus Tavern. So I don't know if you guys heard about this, but this is going to be like a new Fireside Gathering feature where different events are going to play against different taverns. So different tavern. So if I'm in one tavern, I could play against Cinder's tavern. So it's going to be like a round robin playoff with a grand finale. So a couple things, go to firesidegatherings.com if you want to check it out. It's going to be Saturday, September 9th. The deadline for the registration is August 31st at 11:59 p.m. PDT, Pacific Daylight Time. A couple things I want to point out. All Fireside Gatherings must be open to the public. Tavern versus Tavern events must be free for players to participate. Innkeepers must already have an established tavern. Innkeepers are not eligible to play on teams, and all participating players must be 13 years of age or older. So yeah, go check it out. And there's different time zones for your the start times, and it's going to be about 4 or 5 hours, I think they said.
Yeah, so something like. I mean, you gotta play. It's teams of 3. So presumably there's got to be 3 best of 5 matches played.
Mm-hmm.
So I think something like that. But sounds really cool.
Yeah, you want to check in at least 45 minutes before play starts. So
yeah.
But I saw you clapping your hands. What were you thinking about this?
I mean, Cinder, would you like to tell them?
I mean, there's nothing written in stone yet, but. I do have a tavern pretty close to me, and it's also about the same distance away from Appa. And we approached the tavern keeper this past weekend. They had a Fireside for Frozen Throne release, and we said, "Hey, here's this thing. By the way, up as a professional Hearthstone player, and I have a podcast, so maybe you could put some real good people on your team and like have a pretty good chance of winning. Because I think Kenny may have missed this, but the top 2 teams get flown to BlizzCon to play.
I thought it was top 4. It's just top 2.
It's top 2. It's top
Okay.
2, I think. And so, but nonetheless, like that's travel, hotel, your BlizzCon ticket. Actually, maybe they don't do hotel. I forget. But it's definitely like travel and BlizzCon tickets. So it's like,
but anyways, there is an avenue for Cinder for the entire Coin
So we
Concede
could have
podcast to make it
That's
to
right.
BlizzCon.
That's
So we-
amazing.
we're gonna get in there.
Yeah, Cinder messaged me on Twitter and he was like, "How about this?" I'm like, "I'm down. Sign me up right now. Let's go."
Nice.
I already got like my BlizzCon ticket and like hotel and everything sorted out. But still gonna try and high roll this tournament.
Yeah, speaking of that, I'm currently going to be trying to get us some media passes for those of us that will be attending, and then so I'm going to hit Cinder up after this. I need to talk to him a little bit, but also part of the event before that, I know I mentioned this on a previous episode. I will be part of the Con Before the Storm, and it'll be like a podcast, a live podcast. It'll be headed by Garrett from the Angry Chicken, and we have some other podcasters as well. I may go over a little bit more detail. I wasn't going to add this as part of the news, but I did mention it in Discord earlier. So Twitch, or not Twitch, Discord. Sorry, Blunder. I'm thinking purple. So Discord is actually going to be teaming up with Con Before the Storm, and they will be doing some giveaways. So if you're going to be attending, hopefully you can get some giveaways for that too. So exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to it, and we're getting a little bit more in detail. Hopefully we can make a little bit more announcements the closer we get. But I know that they threw that up on their Twitter, and it's been announced, so I can just say that. So yeah, enough of me talking. Let's get it over to you, Cinder.
So this past weekend, we had one pretty cool event, the Red Bull Team Brawl College Clash Edition. Team Brawl came back for the Frozen Throne with all those beautiful new cards to play with. Now, in previous editions, what they did is they invited teams, like players from existing teams and esports organizations, to compete in the Team Brawl, which is a kind of like a sealed deck format. But this time they did a little differently. They got 4 marquee players to act as team captains and coaches for selected players from the TESPA program. So we actually had some young hopefuls under the tutelage of 4 really great pro players to compete in this edition of Team Brawl. It was really cool. So we had Raynad, of course, of Tempo Storm, Firebat, Amnesiac from NRG, and his teammate Hafu, also from NRG. They were the 4 chosen to be the coaches to form their little teams of college hopeful professionals. Each team opened 90 packs, and from those 90 packs, they assembled 3 decks to compete in a best-of-5 round robin with all the teams to decide which 2 teams would play in a final match to decide the champion for this edition. Now, through the round robin, Amnesiac's team actually went 3-0 in matches, while all the other teams went 1-2. So they had to look at some very granular tiebreakers to decide who would play Amnesiac's team in the final. Now, Firebat and Raynad, their teams went 4-7 and 5-7 respectively. Hafu's team went 4-3, and they were going into the final round robin match against Amnesiac's team. So even if they got a 1-3 record and lost that set, that would have given them a 5-6 finish in order to advance into the final. So all they had to do is win 1 game against Amnesiac's team, and they did it, and they moved on to face Amnesiac's team in the finals. And the finals went down actually to a full 5-game set. There were multiple classes with Death Knights. There were some really great creative plays with all of the oddball tools that each deck was handed. But in the end, a full 5-game set, Hafu's team had to shake off some nerves going into the game 4. They had gone down 1-2 early on, but Hafu's students managed to find a win and set up a best of 1, a game 5 on a Shaman mirror. And yes, the Death Knight not Gul'dan, Thrall. Death Knight Thrall was available for at least one of the decks for sure. But it only came down to Bone Mares and Evolves making up most of the difference on the board, and it gave up enough board presence for Hafu's team to push through and take Game 5 and become the champions for this edition of Team Brawl. So I'm curious with Bone Mare having been a deciding factor in this sealed set. How good is Bone Mare really? I know we rated it high, but how good is Bone Mare?
Appa?
Real good. The card's very strong.
Yeah, and Amnesiac, they did come out with the best record for the day, but Hafu being able to take the finals, not a surprise. Hafu is, if you ask this podcaster, the best arena player in the world, and when it comes to sealed formats, she is really one of the best. So congrats to them. But that was it for tournament results. The only thing we got coming up is HGG, the Hearthstone Global Games. The finals will be played on the 25th and 26th, and the final game probably on the 27th after that. And the Choose Your Champion is up, so you get to pick which team you're going to have possibly earn you a couple of packs if they go all the way. The voting for that closes on the 23rd. Hat. And then Kenny, and then Appa. Who'd you pick for your champion?
Well, in the interest of patriotism, I have picked the Ukraine. Because I was thinking about it, and on the one hand, the USA first, they've got the bat, the cat, the rat,
The dog.
The bat, the cat, the dog, not the rat. That was so close. But instead, they have the bat, the cat, the rat, and their forgetful owner. And they also, dog is really good in new metas, and Amnesiac is a young savage. But I took all that information, then I said, but do I want to bet against Kalento? And then I locked in the Ukraine.
I was going to pick the United States. I haven't done it yet, but I was going to pick the United States.
So, if you've been listening to the HGG coverage for a while, you know that I'm a big supporter of South Korea. I also kind of took Hat's approach, and I would not want to bet anything against Handsome Guy, because that dude is bananas at Hearthstone. He's so good. I also think it's kind of easy to underestimate the Asian Hearthstone scene, because they're like pretty removed from us. In terms of like ladder and tournaments and stuff, we don't like get to watch a lot of like Asian tournaments. But I think the South Korean team is like very strong in terms of talent and like skill level. So I think like all the pieces are there for them. They just kind of have to like not screw it up, I think. But I think like regardless of who you picked, I think the top four is going to be very interesting.
And I did a hat, and I also picked Ukraine. I mean, out of that whole crew, I think Ukraine probably has, if not the most skill, then the most credentials, the most feathers in their cap, and it's a really difficult team to bet against. But I can't blame anybody for picking any of these four teams. They're all really, really good. If I had to pick a second team, I'd probably pick South Korea, because like South Korea is going to be prepared. Like they're going to be practicing every day, from their last match previously until their next match coming up.
Yeah, and if South Korea wasn't in this, I would definitely pick Ukraine. But they were just like my dark horse from day one, and I'm just like I'm sticking with them.
Yeah, they're all good picks.
Do we know who the matches are going to be against? They haven't announced that, right?
You know what? There actually was a bracket posted on the announcement page for the dates, but I don't know if those are finalized. Those may be subject to change, so I don't want to announce them just yet.
Okay. Alrighty. I wonder if that would, matter as far as deciding. We have a week till the 23rd. Cool. Anything else you want to mention? I was going to mention that in the news, but I think it's better for that part.
Nah, it's post expansion. It's usually pretty quiet up until the next championship. So I mean, we'll be seeing spring playoffs, or not spring, summer playoffs in September. So that'll be our next probably big tournament segment.
Great. So no news this week, or not news. Well, no news on iTunes or Stitcher reviews. So if you can take a second, go fill that out real quick, and yeah, we'd like to hear the feedback. So I'm gonna kick it over to our best bumper. Go. Now, when I said best bumper, I wasn't referring to you, Appa.
So, Dexplanation this week is actually going to cover deck building. How long ago was it that we got this question from Not Rob from Villains Chosen?
3 months ago, maybe.
It's been a while, and it's just been kind of sitting on the back burner.
I think it was during the tail end of Angora review season.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So it's just been kind of sitting on our show notes, just like grayed out for a while. But we decided to finally get to it, and Esperoth was she also asked something in our questions for the cast room in our Discord. She's asking about deck building too, so we were like, okay, let's just knock this out this week and get out of the way and everything. So we're just gonna be talking about like deck building, basically how to approach it. So when building a deck, you have to have an idea of what you're looking to build. This usually starts with figuring out kind of how you're going to win the game. Like, do you want to win it via quick damage, like Pirate Warrior, control the game, grind your opponent out, resources, with like some examples of this, like Zoth Paladin, or I don't know, any sort of like control warrior deck. Basically, like slower control decks do that, or like win the game in the mid game, like strong board presence, kind of like Hunter's MO. So you kind of have to figure out like how you kind of want to win a game, and after you figure that out, you can move on to figuring out kind of what core cards you want in the deck. And what core cards are, there's some cards that are so integral to certain archetypes, some cards that are so good that you have to have a really good reason not to play them. So you could kind of think like Innervate, Wild Growth, Nourish in kind of ramp decks and Druid, where like those are like so integral to the archetype that you have to play them, or like Animal Companion and Hunter. It's so good that like you can't really justify not playing it. So you want to put those cards in your list so you can see how much room you have to work with. So for some styles of decks, there are cards, and others like Freeze Mage, like combo decks in general, have cards, but the examples I have are like Freeze Mage. Quest Mage has a ton of core cards you have to have in the list. So those would have like more core cards than Aggro Druid, since Druid can play a lot of different cards, whereas Quest Mage has like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, the copy spell, the Antonidas, the Arcane Intellects, Frost Nova Doomsayer, has like a bunch of different cards that you have to have. And there's like it's non-negotiable, whereas like other decks can kind of get away with like different cards at like different mana slots. Like Aggro Druid was the example that I used. Like you have like a ton of different options for drops, whatever. So combo decks are usually more pigeonholed in what they like. So if we're trying to build a deck with like a specific big condition in mind, so let's take a Zoth example. You want to find like 4 death routes you want to play, and then figure out how you're going to get to the which is the Zoth. So in this example, we want to fill our deck with cards that like draw and stall the game. Like in Nizoth Paladin, we have like a quality Consecrate, we have a quality Pyromancer, Truthful Champion, have Lay on Hands sometimes, Forbidden Healing, Dragon Lightlord, you have once, you have 4 years, you have card draw with like Acolyte of Pain, all that kind of stuff. So this can be applied to like most decks. You can apply the same thing to type. So like, how am I getting to my win condition? Like, if my win condition is killing my opponent, how am I getting to that? charge damage, and burn spells. If you want to build a mid-range deck, your creatures fill out your mana curve. And I actually wanted to pass this over to Cinder. I feel like he can technically explain mana curve or something like.
I think that was you, Cinder.
Yeah, I didn't get all of that. I think the internet's being a little loopy. What was the handoff?
It's just, can you explain a mana curve?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you take all of the cards in a deck, all 30 cards, and you line them up based on their mana cost, like if you made little stacks, and you looked at the height of each of those stacks of cards lined up together, you'll see that they actually make a curve. So you'll have a few early game cards, and then you'll have a lot more mid game cards, and then you'll have a few end game cards. And if you go into the deck builder into your collection, and you open up a deck and you hover over your hero portrait, you'll actually see this. It'll show you the actual bar graph that you can see the curve of the mana costs as it goes through the deck. So when people talk about the mana curve, that's what they're talking about. So you'll have aggro decks with very, very shallow curves, like lots of stuff towards 1, 2, and 3. And then you might have control decks that have a lot more stuff towards the end, and maybe don't have like a smooth curve. Maybe they have like a couple of removal spells in the front, and then maybe nothing in the middle, and then a whole bunch of stuff at the end. So it can depend on, the mana curve is dependent on the archetype, but generally speaking, you like to have a fairly smooth curve going from 1 to 10. That's ideally what you want to look for when you're looking at a mana curve.
So, anything to comment on deck building? I guess I'm sure I missed like some stuff, but I wanted to go over like the basic core like fundamentals of deck building before we kind of get into discussion here.
Yeah, I think that's like the big things. Like Rob's question really was, Rob and Esbroth both were really kind of like, how do you identify a build around card? And it's one of those things. It's very difficult to figure out, but I think that the answer to that is like, is this card so powerful that it can win me the game by itself, or does this card have an effect that will change how the game progresses as soon as it's played, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think it's kind of a question of power level. Like in control decks, it's like, can this win the game on its own? And then in aggressive decks, it's like, aggressive like our mid-range deck, it's like, can this like force my opponent to react to it? And if they don't kill it, it will kill them. So I guess an example for like an aggressive deck is like either Mana Worm or Tunnel Trog. Those are like build around cards. And then for control, it's like N'Zoth or the new Gul'dan, Death Knight hero dude, whatever they're called. Because like they're so powerful, they're gonna like come into play, and you're probably gonna die the next turn.
yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Tunnel Trog, because that's a great example of a not very obvious build around card. Like that card is what enabled Aggro Shaman to become as good as it was.
Yeah, with that you could just jam like all of the overload cards into a deck, and then just like be fine, because whenever you drew Tunnel Trog, your win percentage went up. It just skyrocketed.
It
so
turns out 1-drops are actually the best cards in Hearthstone's history.
Oftentimes.
With stats.
Well, you think about the cards that have been nerfed in Hearthstone's history, and the last 3 were Spirit Claw, Small Time Buccaneer, and Crystal Core. And they all cost 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yep.
So I have a deck building hypothetical.
Okay.
This is a loaded question.
I'm ready.
How would you build a deck around the Lich King?
I wouldn't actually.
Oh,
I-
really?
No,
Don't think it's a build around card.
no.
So
I don't
explain
think
to me
it's-
your perspective.
I don't think it's either powerful enough to end the game on its own. I think it gives you a little bit of incremental advantage. And I don't think I don't know what my second point was. I'm just going to stick with my first point, I guess.
The Lich King is not itself enough threat or power to define an archetype. Like it's the Lich King is kind of sort of like Dr. Boom, and then it goes in a lot of different decks, but it's not mandatory. Like you could get away with putting any powerful thing at 8 instead of the Lich King. But the Lich King just is a good card. But I don't. But it doesn't. There's nothing on the Lich King that says you can build a strategy to get to me, and that be the archetype. Like it can go into mid range. It can go into control. There's even some aggro decks that are running it. So I don't see it as itself a build around.
It has a lot of ways to answer it too. So.
Yeah.
It's like you go.
I want to make sure we don't get into the trap of saying this card can die sometime, so that means it's bad, because that's a trap. So the Lich King, I think, is a good example of a card that is not a build around, but that is generally it's kind of your tier 2 card of you figure out if it belongs in your deck after you decide what's the core of this, what do I want my deck to accomplish. But what does Lich King accomplish exactly? It's not quite the value card, because it'll usually generate you 1 card, and you may or may not be able to use it. It's not quite an aggressive card, because it's 8 mana for an 8 attack. It's not quite a defensive card, because it's an 8-butt taunt on 8. But it does all these things mildly to reasonably well. So, you have to decide, do you want an 8-drop in your deck? If so, what do you need it to accomplish? Do you need a little bit of value, a little bit of defense, a little bit of offense? Lich King belongs for you, but it's not the sort of thing where you say, hey, I'm going to go build a Lich King deck. Now, that starts to change when you look at a card like Ysera. Even then, that's not a build-around card, but it's very clearly meant to be a late-game value generator. Lich King is kind of like that, but it doesn't have a 12-butt, it's got an 8-butt, and you need that bigger butt to make sure that it lives. Yes, it's back to butt strength, Kenny. How long did you think we were going to stay away from this?
Yeah.
So...
You like butts, you just can't lie.
And you other hosts can't deny. But you look at other build around cards, right? You think about most of the Death Knights, I think, qualify as that. I think especially Uther is a big one, Jaina in particular, Valera as well. I think the ones that are harder to achieve, and Gul'dan are definitely build around cards.
I mean, we see Anduin right now, and like part of the reason we see the Razakus decks, like we actually see Raza the Enchained, is because of Anduin, because of his hero power.
Yeah.
Well, and Raza's a great card too. It's, I think, just Raza Reno, like Reno Priest was the worst of the 3 Cabal decks, but now Raza is the only class legendary that makes the Highlander deck building worth doing. So I think that says that was actually the best class legendary, but it turns out the most important class legendary before that was Reno, and Priest didn't abuse that as much because it generally hovered at a much higher life total and was able to control the board a little bit less. So, and Raza is a great build around card.
What do you think of Lyra, or Lyra, however you say her name?
Well, you think about the Miracle Priest decks, right, that were about 4 to 6 weeks to Ungoro. They had no win condition. The top end of the deck was Dragonfire Potion. That was the only 6-drop. Everything else was Lyra, Inner Fire, Divine Spirit, and a bunch of spells. So whenever a card that you include in your deck, especially a legendary, starts to warp the way that you construct it, you know you've found yourself a build around. I think Lyra is an exceptional example of that, because the deck construction when that card came out and when that card was included was so different than when it didn't. And you look at Dragon Priest decks, they didn't play Lyra because they couldn't fit the spell density that you needed. Instead, they played Draconid Operative, which is another card that is so good that you want to build your deck to make sure that card works.
And you know, the build around card for, now that we're talking about Priest, the build around card for Silence Priest was Humongous Razorleaf. It represented exactly what Silence Priest wanted, which was an enormous body for very little mana, and it gave it that critical amount of minions in order to target with the silence effects. You had 2 different silence effects and 2 different minions, and then plus you have a bunch of health buffs, rolling throughout the rest of the class. But as soon as that 4/8 hit the card pool, Silence Priest became a thing, and Purify was no longer a joke. So the build around cards can be really stealthy, and you got to be able to think about how does the inclusion of this card change the way the class is played. Another one I'm just going to throw in real quickly was Goblin Blast Mage. That was a 4-mana 5/4 mage card that said if you have a mech on the board, deal 4 damage randomly to enemies. And it was such an amazingly good, powerful card that Mech Mage became a thing because just that one card was such a great tempo swing on turn 4 that you wanted to make sure you had a sticky board of mechs through turns 1 through 3. And it was a good deck for a good long while.
Yeah, it all comes down to like how much power you get out of, how much mileage you get out of a card. It's like whenever you have a build-around card like Mysterious Challenger, Tunnel Trog, Goblin Blast Mage, Azoth, Raza, Lyra, like all these cards, they all have like in common, they're all incredibly powerful, and like they either produce an enormous amount of value if you're playing a slower deck, or they put an immense amount of pressure on your opponent if you're playing like a more aggressive deck like Blast Mage and Tunnel Trog. Or like Undertaker was another one that would put an enormous amount of pressure on your opponent. So it like goes like both ways, and like the aggressive side of the spectrum and controlling. It's just like if it like overperforms for its mana cost for what you're trying to do, I think would be a good way to phrase it. It's like you found yourself a build a card.
Well, and you want to make sure when you're building a deck that you don't just pick all the cards that are generically good and put them into a deck. You need to have a focus because synergies will beat good stuff pretty much every time. And typically when Blizzard prints a card that supersedes that rule, that usually means they've made a design mistake. I think the best examples I can think of for that are Piloted Shredder and Sludge Belcher, because those went in just about every deck no matter what you did because they were just generally that good. But typically you don't want to build your deck around just having 30 good cards. You want to have some kind of synergy that makes sense. Innervate is the best card in Standard. It is not a build-around card. You put it in your Druid decks, but I think it'd be a mistake to say you are building around that card. Now, if you're Aggro Druid, you're building around Mark of the Lotus, Mark of Yasharaj, Living Mana, Savage Roar. Those are the cards you're building around. Innervate is the oil that keeps that engine running.
But it's just a little icing on top of the cake.
Yeah, but you're not building around it. And I think the oldest build around cards that we still have are Ice Block and Gadgetzan Auctioneer. And I think if you look at the power level of cards that have come and gone since then, better cards have been printed before and printed after. But because of deck building revolving around the powerful, unique effect that those cards generate, you still see them to this day because the effect is so powerful when you construct your deck around it that it's more than the sum of its parts.
Great. I like to keep this going. Do you guys feel like we could add a little bit more questions to this segment, or do you want to keep it short this week? I have a couple other questions.
Covered a decent amount, but if you got other questions, then
throw it into the pile.
Sure. So some of not Rob's questions here, I'm going to throw them in the mix here too. So he said, how can I identify my favored and unfavored matchups when I homebrew my own decks?
Like the best thing for you, if you're building a completely homebrewed deck, is download a deck tracking software that can track your matches, because statistics are awesome. If you play enough games with your homebrew deck, you're gonna have to play a lot of games, but if you play enough games, you'll identify your unfavored and favorite matchups. You can adjust your deck accordingly.
Yeah, that's such a hard thing to predict ahead of time. Like, you can kind of get a general idea. Like, do you have an aggro deck? Then it's probably good against mid-range. Do you have a mid-range deck? It's probably good against control.
Yeah, like, I've built some control shaman lists, and I just like haven't even played them on ladder yet. And I'm like, okay, these are gonna be terrible against Jade Druid, and like good versus other things, just because of like I built up with a bunch of board clears and like healing, and the win conditions like Azoth, like getting to the super late game, like Jade Druid just does that better than what I want to do. So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be pretty bad against Jade Druid. So you have like decks that exist that are like very good in like certain scenarios. Like Jade Druid's very good if you're going to the late game. That could probably going to be a bad matchup if that's what you're trying to do. But I feel like those kind of decks are like few and far between. Like Jade Druid and Quest Rogue are good examples of that. But outside of that, I would just say tracking software is very helpful for this.
Yeah, tests.
Yeah,
Anything
that's
else
how you know.
you want to add, Hat?
Well, so the first thing to do is find a friend and play some games against them. Appa and I actually did a lot of this when he was testing for DreamHack Austin. He's like, I have these new decks, play the best decks in the format against me. And I'm like, smash! And he's like, thanks.
Okay, cool.
So-
Found the weaknesses.
So the other thing to do, the best advice I can give you if you're making a deck is play all the other good decks in the format. Because if you think there's a deck that always beats you and you're like, this deck is unfair, I can't figure out how to beat it, go play that deck. And either two things will happen. One, you will win 100% of your games, you'll be rank 1 legend and we'll have you on the podcast. Or two, you'll lose games because everyone loses games in Hearthstone and you'll figure out how you're losing. You'll understand your game plan a little better because you'll see the weaknesses, what you need to do to win, what you need to do to lose. You'll understand what your opponents need to do against you to win. And then you can switch to other decks and figure them out. For all the people that were saying before the nerf, Quest Rogue was overpowered, I'm like, I'm playing it, I'm at 51% win rate. It's not overpowered, just when it wins, it's got very strong polarized matchups where it feels unfair. But if you play the deck that seems like you can't beat ever, you'll learn that it loses. And you want to generally have an idea of what do all the decks in this format do, so you know how to attack them and you know how to defend against them. You can make some assumptions without doing that. You know for sure before the nerf, if you were playing a slow control deck with no taunts, no heals, no board clears, and no combo win condition, Quest Rogue was going to beat you. You could figure that out because of the basic nature of the game plan. But the more you play decks, the more you figure out the nuances in your game plan and their game plan and how to attack it.
I like just recently I've been playing Mill Rogue on Wild, and that kind of reminds me of that deck. Not that I crafted it or anything. I'm not that good, but I mean, you have the Death Rattle cards. Help me out with the names here. The 3/8 taunt that
Death
they get a
Lord.
card. Yes, and Sludge
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 Belcher.
Belcher.
Yeah, so those help you keep the game going so you can draw your win condition, and then N'Zoth just helps you keep going. And same thing, like, I mean, you have Shadow Step for N'Zoth too if you really have to get that game going to the end, and then you kill them by milling them. So it's at least you have like something to you have like an alternate condition to get to that final destination. So I think that helps with homebrewing is understanding, like if you're playing against aggro, you just kind of have to grind out till you get your win condition and understand what you have to do for that. Or for your control matchups, you kind of have a different type of play. So
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like one of the things I do when I build a deck is that I try to ask once I ask, what's my win condition, then I ask, do I have a plan for every phase of the game? Like if I'm playing aggro, do I have enough tools to like vomit out my hand and go face? Or if I'm playing control, do I have enough answers in my deck to deal with that kind of opening from my opponents? So I like to make sure that my deck has play at all points in the game, not necessarily the same kind of play, but just answers to specific board states or being able to create the board states I want, or both.
cool. Can I throw another one at you guys?
Yeah.
He also said, how do I know if I have too much or too little draw in my deck?
This is it's kind of like a high level math question and also kind of a what is it like what feels good question. So like the correct answer is like calculus, and then the answer that most people use is they play games and then they figure out when they're just lacking card draw. Like whenever I was playing with Kazan, we were playing Quest Mage, and I was like, okay, we might suffer this game because we have a lack of, like, we don't have any loot hoarders or acolyte pains because we built the deck from scratch. And then we were at like turn 15 or something, and I was like, look, right here, this one card isn't doing anything for us. We wish that was an acolyte of pain because we're just trying to draw our Archmage Antonidas right now. And he's like, okay, that's a good point. So afterwards, he just took that one specific card out and like replace it for an Acolyte of Fame. Because in that scenario, it was not good, like at all. And we just won card draw. So that's kind of like the what feels right or like guess and check approach.
When I think of this, I also think there's two type of like quote unquote drawing, and I think it's basically a resource of having cards in your hands, because you're gonna have like I've been playing a lot of Dragon Priest, right? And you have the 6/5 that has the Death Rattle. You get a dragon in your hands. Well, you played a card, but you also keep one in your hand. So it's like you're drawing, but you're not really drawing a card. Like
It's more important in decks with like specific win conditions, like in N'Zoth decks particularly. You'll see N'Zoth decks play like Loot Hoarder and stuff sometimes, and you think about it, you're like, okay, if you're in like a control mirror and you play Loot Hoarder, you're gonna get Loot Hoarder back with N'Zoth, and you're gonna like mill a card or something. But it also digs you to your N'Zoth like one card deeper into your deck, and that's like all you really want. Whenever you're building a deck around a specific card like that, is you're trying to dig to that card pretty quickly. You're trying to like develop your death rattles, get those killed off, trade into your opponent's stuff, and then also dig through your deck quickly, and then play that one card. So it's kind of dependent on like what your victory condition is, and it's dependent on like the texture of your deck at the same time.
Yeah, it depends a lot on the win condition. Like to use two polar opposites, Pirate Warrior needs about 5 to 6 cards to win the game if everything goes well. So you don't really need to draw that many. You just need to, mulligan for the right ones and then play them in the correct order. But Freeze Mage, you probably need all 30, right? You need to have all of the draw to get to all of the stall to get to all of the burn and the ice blocks. And of course, Alexstrasza. So you need to use, probably 25 out of the 30 cards to actually win with Freeze Mage, in the average scenario. So it's a question of how much of your deck do you need to get to your win condition, and then as you're playtesting, am I drawing enough cards to get there?
It's actually Jade Druid. It needs just the number of cards in your opening hand plus 5 more on turn 10. Yeah. It's but yeah, there's definitely a spectrum here, right? I think Pirate Warrior is a great example, Cinder, because if you are putting card draw into Pirate Warrior, you are not playing Pirate Warrior correctly. I feel confident in saying that, because you need to convert your cards into damage, and it's not about drawing more cards. It's the resource you need there is time. The more time you spend, the worse the game gets, especially in the Bone Mare meta. Right, you get to turn 7 with Pirate Warrior. If you are not prepared for a Malfurion Death Knight or a Bone Mare, you're gonna lose. So you need to just maximize the speed in which you put your opponent on the clock and convert your cards into damage. You don't need more of them; you need the right ones. So the answer to this, I don't think there's really a mathematical equation so much as what your deck is trying to do. It comes back to your game plan, to your core cards. If you think about how Freeze Mage wins, Alexstrasza with an ice block up, and then 4 to 5 burn spells, plus not die while you get all that together. You think about that game plan, and it took years and years for that game plan to be as refined as it is, but that's a game plan that requires you to have a lot of really specific parts that are put together over the course of time. The only reason that deck is able to exist because the amount of card draw and resource generation as well as stall that you have.
Yeah, so in Freeze Mage, the deck is built like a third of it is like win conditions, a third of it is like freeze and or board clears, and then a third of it is just card draw. And then that's about how it's built. It's like every other card either helps stay alive, kills them, or draws cards. And then there's pretty much no exception.
Yep. And you think about it's Patron Warrior and Temple Warrior. Any Battle Rage deck has always been about the same. You put about 10 cards in your deck just to draw other cards, and then you bury your opponent under resource advantage. And you think about Miracle Rogue. Miracle Rogue secretly plays very little card draw. It plays Hallucination and Mimic Pod. Fan of Knives is kind of a cycle. Outside of that, you play almost no card draw, except Gadgetzan Auctioneer is secretly all the card draw. So you kind of build your deck around I have these small, tiny, incremental pieces. And again, this is a very refined deck over multiple expansions and years of testing. But that deck doesn't want a lot of card draw. It wants a lot of cards that play into its core game plan, which is play Gadget and Auctioneer and then generate value by doing more than you're supposed to do in a single turn, and don't run out of resource while you do it. And you're not putting card draw into decks like any Warlock deck because it's right there next to your hero portrait, right? You're not going to put card draw into your Warlock deck. You're just going to life tap. So it really depends. What am I trying to do and how am I trying to do it? A lot of decks, the control decks, Control Warrior, Control Paladin, a lot of their resource generation is the hero power, in that you just, instead of drawing cards, you don't have to spend cards, which is almost the same thing. In Control Warrior, if your opponent was attacking you for 2, you just hit the button. You don't play anything. If your opponent has to play a card to pressure you, and you don't have to play a card to deal with it, you just got a card. And then you keep tapping that armor, keep tapping that armor, keep tapping that armor until they go wide and keep playing cards. Then you Brawl, which is 5-mana card, kill 4 other cards, you just drew 4 cards. That's basically what that is. When you're able to generate that virtual card advantage, it's a much larger discussion. We could be here all day. But that's where you kind of figure out, is card draw the answer? Am I looking for value? Am I looking for resources? What resources am I looking for? It can get super complicated.
It's like, am I looking for cards that literally say draw a card on them, or am I looking for cards that generate value, like 2-for-1s, stuff like that? But yeah, deck building gets pretty complicated. But just wanted to cover kind of the fundamentals and a little intermediate stuff here.
Cool. I'll save the other one for last. It doesn't really match up with what we're talking about here. So that pretty much does it for that segment. Before we get to something a little more serious here, any other last comments? Say your piece.
Seems good.
All right. So this is probably in its own bumper, but I'm going to kick it over to Cinder here because I think he has something well prepared here for this next part.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play a bumper, but I'm gonna borrow a couple minutes from the show. Thank you to you 3 for allowing me to do so. Every year, I walk in the Out of the Darkness walks to raise funds for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I have personally suffered from suicide. I've lost my best friend and another close friend after that, and I know plenty of other people who have as well. And it's part of the disease that is depression, and it is a disease, and it can be cured, it can be treated, and suicide can be prevented. So every year I do this and hope to reduce the number of suicides in the United States and elsewhere. And you can help me do that too. We put a link in the show notes. If you follow that link, you'll go to my family's team page. You can offer your moral support or walk with us, or make a donation in our name and in our friend's name towards the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. All I do is just ask you to click that link and give it some thought. That's it. Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you want me to take over, or let's have somebody a hat. Why don't you read the email we got
Here,
this week?
let me read it.
Let you read it? Okay. Okay.
I'll read
Should we?
it because
Okay.
I've stated that I do not want to comment on this because
Okay.
if you have anything nice to say, don't say it at all.
Well, so let's lead in a little bit. We are very in tune with our viewers, our listeners. We want to make sure that we pay attention to all feedback we get. We're really big on community building. We're very active in Discord, very active in Twitch, on Twitter, and it's all about the best part of the podcast. And what we do this for is the listeners, for all of you, and to engage with everyone that finds value in our content. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't always line up with people's expectations. We got a review that was much more on the negative side than usual, and we took it pretty seriously, really seriously, as a cast. We talked amongst ourselves and then shared it with our patrons to give us some perspective. But because we are primarily an audio show and our patrons are a small subsection of our audience, we wanted to share it with all of you and read you a small snippet of the review so you can give us some feedback as well. And Cinder has prepared some comments afterwards.
So this comes from Anonymous, and we've cut this down pretty significantly because it's basically manifesto. It's very long. So we're just going to highlight some of the more important I guess, issues that this person brought up. So they say, just listen to the first 40 minutes of Magical Christmas Land, which was our last episode, and I have to say, what a terrible show. Where did you go wrong? I defy you to go back and listen to the show as if you didn't know the people, as if you were a first-time listener, and tell me what you think. It was know-it-alls talking to other know-it-alls. Then the card review. Not all of the cards have even been revealed, but you jumped into the Druid Death Knight card and not once mentioned what it was. The battle cry, nor did you say what the hero power did. Instead, you described how useful it was, etc. If you had a picture on a live stream somewhere, it may have been different, but damn, that was bad. And this is where I stopped talking.
So the listener went on for a bit, with other, very specific examples of what they think we did not well in that episode. And I did want to respond to this because, I've always said that if we got a bad review, I was going to read it on the air. And true to that, I wanted to read it and give it the respect that it actually deserved. This listener took the time to write a very detailed message as to what they felt went wrong with our last episode, and we really did take that feedback to heart. But to specifically answer our listener, you are right. We did not read the card texts for the reviews. By the time the show had been recorded, like when we were recording, all the cards had been revealed at that point, and we had a vision for the show that our listeners would have it as a companion piece with them while they open packs and while they build decks and that kind of thing. And we wanted them to be able to have our voice kind of in their ear, helping them, analyze some of the new critical points in the different classes. And that may have been short-sighted on our part. Not all the listeners would have seen all the cards just yet, even though they'd all been revealed. Or maybe they were somewhere besides being on a phone or a computer where they were able to reference the cards. Now, we did show the cards on the live stream at our Twitch channel, and we do have VODs available for that. But we do understand that not everybody was able to see that at the time we broadcast it. And just for one more avenue of help, we do list the card texts in our show notes. We have a link to our document that we used during the show. So we did give the listeners all of the resources, but you are right. Like for the people who were audio only, for whatever reason, they did not get the benefit of the card text. We recognize that. So we made the decision to do that since we assumed everyone had access to that information already, but assumptions are problematic. And our mission is to make the competitive side of the game more accessible to everyone. So next time we do a review, we'll definitely use this feedback as a touchstone for improving the way we do those kinds of shows. And hopefully we will better meet your expectations as a listener. And it's not just you. We asked other people, who have given feedback to the show. What do you think about that last episode? And some of the things you said were echoed. So we believe that you were on the mark about some of this criticism. So we want to thank you for your feedback. We do listen, and we do want to make the show better. And we appreciate that you took the time to actually think out this very detailed email and carefully compose a criticism. It wasn't just like a rage blast. You actually had real points that you were trying to make, and we heard you. So thank you once again. And that inbox is always open for anybody who wants to email us, because we want to improve, and we believe that all feedback is valuable.
Yeah, you got to keep us in check every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
So, Hat, what do you want to say?
I think we have spent more time digesting this email than more than anything else on this episode of the podcast, and more than some of the Knights of the Frozen Throne cards. I think we thought as much about Bone Mare that we thought about this email. We would be in a lot better place with our deck building. This was kind of difficult to process for us, but at the same time, I think it's important to recognize we don't have everything figured out. And I don't know if we made massive missteps to the point of making content that wasn't accessible, but at the same time, it wasn't accessible to this person. That still matters to us. Now, we're not at the point where we're going to say, we're going to chop off this entire thing that we do because one person didn't get it. That wouldn't be right, but it wouldn't be right to ignore this person either. So we've kicked around a lot of ideas. I think one that stands out to me is that review season is... Every podcast puts out 3-hour episodes multiple times a week, and it's really hard to differentiate. It's really hard to keep up. It's so much content. People really want it, though. right? I'm not going to go into our download number specifically, but the review episodes of Knights of the Frozen Throne that we did are our most downloaded episodes of the show in history by far. It's not even close. So there's clearly some kind of demand for this content, and maybe there's some kind of middle ground where we can each pick 10 cards that we think are going to be a big deal. We talk about why, and then we have a little bit more time to discuss as a show, and we don't have 3-hour episodes. We need to do something to figure out how do we engage more with audio listeners, how do we make sure we don't alienate anyone, but we also need to make sure we don't take away the content that you know and you love. So please feel free to reach out to us. Share with us. It doesn't have to be specific to this episode. Anything that you think could be improved, anything that you think that we're doing well, that you want us to continue. We're looking for feedback on how we format our next round of review episodes, because I think that's where our content diverges from our typical format, which I think we all feel pretty good about. And your feedback will help us determine which way do we go with that.
And that is part of the reason why we're actually reading this out loud and acknowledging that there are things that we can improve. I think you never get better if you stop looking back at yourself or self-criticizing how you could be better. So I applaud you for actually writing into us and not going in and just writing a review on one episode. It's happened, not only to other podcasts, but it can happen to us. You never know. But I applaud him for that, and we could tell he was very passionate because of how many paragraphs he wrote.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So, but I mean, there's a kernel of truth to everything, even if there were certain things that we weren't agreeing with. Not that we didn't agree, but I think maybe we're just not aware. I was going to mention something else about this. Yeah. Sorry, I got sidetracked with my thought process here, but anything else you want to say so I can try and ponder about that for a second?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, well. So I think it's really good that we got something like this and we're thinking about how we can make it better. So, I was going to say, one thing we could have been a little bit more clear on was for those audio listeners. I want to acknowledge that, and we're going to try and do a better job of that specifically, especially, you can tell even on this episode, I don't know the names of cards. I don't know the names of things. So actually reviewing what they do, what they are, how many mana, health, big butts, as Hat likes to say.
It's butt strength.
Helps. Butt strength. Oh, there we go.
Butt strength.
Yeah.
Very important.
So we acknowledge that, and we're going to try and do better. So I hope that's apparent to everybody, and I hope this person's listening, because at least they're going to know that we addressed it and thought about it, molded over more than anything else this week. So
they wrote that because they wanted to be heard, and this to me was the best way to let them know that we heard them, was to respond.
Yep. Sorry it was cut short and sweet, but we did leave it anonymous, and it is on our show notes if you like to go check that out and read it all. So yeah, we're good on that.
Yep.
Appa?
Yep.
All right. So we do want to say you can send that into coinconcede@gmail.com if you want to leave us comments or anything. We're open. Just send it in to us. We'll send it. Or you could go to the website. It'll automatically send it to us as well. I feel like Hat didn't do enough talking this week. So Hat, you want to take the thanks?
The number of times I've heard that in my life can be counted on one hand. But yes, I'll be glad to do the thanks. Thanks to Stephanel for letting us use his cover. Check him out in his channel linked in our show notes. You can catch our blog post at coinconcede.com along with our show notes. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede. Like and share our Facebook page at facebook.com/coinconcede. Go to discord.coinconcede.com if you want to talk to us, and also our super awesome community, which you should totally do. Even if you don't like us, you should like them. Go to shop.coinconcede.com for cool shirts and mugs, but unfortunately not hats. Redbubble does not sell hats. I'm as sad as you are, possibly more. Go to patreon.coinconcede.com if you want to support us. It's never about the money. You don't need to, but if you want coaching, feel free to sign up there. And if you just want to throw us a little something to help support us, then we greatly appreciate it. And big thanks to our producers, Viriatus, Psych Mopco, and soon Reganus Prime.
Yeah, buddy.
Woo!
Woohoo! Q Bumper.
Yay.
Well.
You can queue it, we just don't have it.
Alrighty. So I think we covered Cinder's shout out.
Yes.
So okay. So if you still haven't gone, go check that donation link on our website. It should be on our show notes. We linked it in Twitch, and I think it was. Who else was Appa? Did you do your shout out?
Yeah, I did.
It was earlier, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna skip you two.
It was me all
what
along.
about Hat?
Couple shout outs. First of all, Wicked Good for letting me guest, because I was on his podcast Off Curve, which is very different from this one. He actually just called me on the way home from work and we talked about Hearthstone for a while, and then we put it on the internet, which is great. It's any of you that hang out in any Discord with me and Wicked Good for any amount of time know that A, we're always talking, B, we're always punning, C, Cinder's always rolling his eyes. That's actually mostly it.
Or sighing.
Yeah,
Sighs.
or sighing. And also a shout out to Blister Guy for his he actually stopped what he was doing to listen to the podcast. And it's just generally been a great friend and has also hit 250 episodes on Walk to Work this week.
Man.
Yeah, it's 250 episodes. Now, keep in mind, he does 3 a week, so he is a prolific producer. And in between all of that, he also makes infographics, which are super awesome. So I don't know how that guy has the time, because he also has a kid. So, yeah, and he works a lot, too.
Because he's a legend. That's how.
That's true.
And he gets legend quite often, too. Like,
yes. Yep.
All right, time for my shout out.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give my shout out to Evident and his website because it was a lifesaver this week between me moving and not having time. So thank you for everything you do. And speaking of Evident, he's in our Twitch chat. So let's go over Twitch chat here real quick. We have Andrew is Living, Arctic Chill, Blue Spartan, Chris Leckness, or Torlan, Drunken Monk, Evident S, HS, Vague Winds, Fly That Kite, Hatch and Slash, Lost Drift Games, Markshire, Modi, Puffy Shirt, HS, Riddly Diddly Doodly, Samurai Flea, Steven Sensei, Taylor Eve, and how would you say that? The Hikaito Mix, and Random Dude. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry if I butchered your names.
Is his name Random Dude, or you just couldn't figure out how to say it, so you just called him a Random Dude?
I should do that. Just a Random Dude, the actual Random Dude.
Yes. And then some other random dudes.
Yeah.
It's if they were a band, it'd be Random Dude and the Random Dudes.
And dudettes.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the band.
All right, so that does it for our episode. Where can we find you? We'll start with Hat.
You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/ridiculoushat. I am on the quest for followers. I'm at 875, hoping for 900 soon. And you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/ridiculoushat. That's Monday nights and Thursday nights. You can find me any Discord, just say my name. You don't even have to say it 3 times. I'm not Beetlejuice. Just say it once and it'll ding on my phone.
There you go. And you can find Cora at Songbird HS. And you can follow her on Twitch at Songbird Cora. I think she has an I don't know if she announced it yet.
She did.
She did it. All right. So she has
a subscribe button.
She has a subscribe button.
Woo!
Woohoo! So go check her out. All right. And Appa, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Appa_HS, and I'm basically addicted to Twitter at this point. So you can find me on there pretty much at any point of the day, unless I'm sleeping. And then on Twitch, twitch.tv/AppaHS. I stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then on the weekends, whenever I feel like it.
All right. And Ridiculous Hat. Or I already did you. Cinder.
Don't find me. Find the link to donate to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in the show notes. I'm going to put it in the Discord. I'm going to put them on my Twitter. Well, since it's my Twitter, at Cinder Ascendant. But go find that link. Help me fight suicide and depression.
There you go. Yeah. Personal, specifically those that have served too are dear to my heart. So.
Yeah, do your thing, and I'm gonna say one more thing about it.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at KCCO_gamer, and mainly get a hold of me on Discord. I'm pretty good at keeping up, at least with Coin Concede. I'm on everything, but just say my name like Hat said for him, and I will respond. I will acknowledge. So, Cinder, you want to say something?
Yeah, so like the Out of the Darkness walks, it's a big community event. People just go for a 2-mile hike, and you wear your shirt, you have your number, you're just trying to raise funds. But the first couple of years for the New Orleans walk was like a couple hundred people here and there. The third year, a number of active military and veterans got involved,
Teamed up,
and
yeah.
it exploded. Like thousands of people showed up, and it was amazing. And Kenny is absolutely right. It's even more a problem for active duty military and veterans.
And veterans.
So it's like it's hugely important. We want to protect those who protect us, and you can do that as well by helping us with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Yeah. So, little aside here. I mean, I guess I'm going to add on to that. But when is the actual walk this year?
It is in September. If you give me like a hot second, I will tell you.
So I'll probably go to that. But so this is also a subject that is very close to me. Not trying to be a downer on anybody, because it's not like a subject to be like sad about. But I suffer from clinical depression. I have to like get up in the morning, and like before too long, I have to like take medicine every day. It's a disease, but it is treatable. And I take my medicine, I'm fine. But like if I forget, it like really sucks for the rest of the day. But it's something to like definitely bring awareness to, because I had no idea that I had depression like when I was in high school and like early years of college, and I actually failed out of college my third semester in because I just didn't want to get out of bed. I basically just didn't want to do anything. I stayed in my room, didn't go to class, flunked out, and then about a year after, about working like full time, 40 hours a week, I went to the doctor, and they were like, "Yeah, you got depression," and they gave me this medicine. I was like, "Okay, everything's awesome. Why didn't I know about this before?" So this is definitely a really good cause. It's like, it's very manageable. It's just like people need to know about it. And
and there's it's a big stigma, and but there shouldn't be, because
I have no problem talking about it, because like some people are like, "Oh, you should talk about that." It's like, so like if you had a broken leg, would you go to the doctor to get that fixed?
Yep.
Go to the doctor for it. Like, it's not a big deal.
Same should be for any mental health. And to answer your question, the walk is on September the 16th. So in just about a month, it'll be at Audubon Park at 10 a.m. So if you're in the area, come walk with us. And if you're not, show your support in other ways. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Speaking of donations, that's part of the outro that I do. That's part of my name is KCCO. They do a lot of donations and charities and events like that too. So just to bring that to light too, if you ever are thinking, I got a raise this month, or I got a bonus or something, I want to donate. Hey, it's a good thing. It's good, feel good thing too. So I'm gonna end it with that and say, keep calm and chive on. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.